like cinematography is a language that everyone can read, but almost no one can write. And
Mhm.
it's like there is this universality to like understanding imagery where it's like when you see a certain angle and it makes you feel a certain way, that's just like happening subconsciously. And I think that like trying to like reverse engineer and be able to write that language is what was always really exciting to me.
Mm.
And sort of like I think that still like the way that we talk about it is so sort of blunt or sort of like not particularly nuanced. You know, it's like, oh, like a low angle makes someone appear powerful. It's like, okay, but I've
Right.
definitely seen a high angle make someone appear powerful plenty
Hmm.
of times. And like, why is that? And is it context based? Is it, you know, is it a certain amount of degrees below the eye line? Or like, you know, figuring out that stuff and sort of developing that intuition of visual language, I think is like really exciting to me. And that's like
Yeah.
where I'm most motivated to like explore beyond like
Mm.
shaping a performance or editing or any of these other crafts, which I think are also interesting. But I just kind
Right.
of narrowed in on this thing that I think is for me, you know.
Amazing. I think there's something in that, what you just said, and also what you said before about you leaving school and then having to find work and, you have bills to pay. And I'm always curious about people's approaches in the beginning stages of their career, because most of the time you're saying yes to almost everything that comes your way. If
Yeah.
it's an interview, if it's a commercial, music, whatever it is, most of the time you're saying yes. But in those instances, how do you find, or maybe how did you start to develop your own voice or your own style in scenarios or in projects that maybe didn't have a style, or
Yeah.
if that makes sense, like low budget stuff, like how did you start to develop yourself in the
Totally.
beginning?
I mean, I some of my first like regular jobs were shooting like top down things for like Disney like YouTube channel stuff or like shooting I did a bunch of these like makeup tutorials that are like, oh, make yourself look like Ariel from The Little Mermaid or whatever. You know, like I had a friend who was like working at Disney and he was just like, I can just book you on all these things. And,
Wow.
you know, they paid decently. And I was like, I can kind of just do it myself. And I kind of like started to just treat that like a laboratory in a way. And I would just be like, okay, how do I light it this time to like show off this? And I think ultimately what you figure out is that there are things that you don't like. And I realized early on, I was like, you know what? I just can't get a light through silk to look a way that I want it to look.
Hmm.
Like, and I was kind of like, maybe I just don't like silk. I don't know. Or maybe it's just not right for most of the stuff that I'm trying to do. And what else can I use? And so I think it's easy to get on autopilot in some of those scenarios and be like, oh, I know exactly what Disney wants. They want this light with this camera and this lens and do it every time. And I think one of the things that I did that was really helpful was always try to change one part of the equation a little bit. Like I would always be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'm going to do it with like just tungsten and see what I can do. And like I'm going to bounce tungsten off of foam core with muslin stretched over or whatever. You know, it's like everyone had been reading the Roger Deakins forum and was
Yeah.
trying to make
Yeah.
the muslin tungsten bounce.
It's
But
nice.
it is. That's what's funny. It's like, you know, it's sometimes it's
It
like
works.
the farther you go, the more you realize that like the most fundamental tools are
Yeah.
actually like the the fundamentals for a reason because they just look good.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would say just like I was really putting thought into even the most sort of mundane or like seemingly uninteresting things because it gave me a day on a stage with equipment to try to like innovate in some way.
Mm.
Um, so that was like really useful to me. I think that like there is definitely I don't know. I think that it's like it's if you're not excited by the opportunity to have equipment in that kind of space, then like it might not be I don't want to say it might not be the job for you, but I think that like you have to learn to capitalize on those opportunities because
Yeah.
it's like then the next time, you know, I always think like the first time I ever used an HMI was like in one of those jobs and it was like once you've done that, you're like, okay, well now I know it's basically the same as a tungsten light, but it takes time to warm up. It's,
Hmm.
you know, it's a different color temperature and you don't want a hot restrike. Like you start to like bank these things and then it feels more comfortable to use them in a more high stakes environment.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I just think like always innovating in some way or like trying things,
Right.
whether you shoot it or not, you know, it's like you have time with lights, you have time with a camera, gotta use it. Yeah.